101.9 FM Lagos, and of course sending messages to our WhatsApp number, which is
0809 440 981, and hashtag on Twitter is freshlypressed981. We'll start with a story from Thisday newspaper. NNPC signs agreement with Shell, Seplat, Oando, others to implement a $3.7 billion gas project. So the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, yesterday sealed an agreement with the Shell Petroleum Development Company, with Seplat Petroleum Development Company PLC, Oando PLC, and other partners on the implementation of the 7 critical gas projects, development projects worth $3.7 billion to bridge the gas supply shortfall in the domestic markets. What's the breakdown to you, Cheta?
Well, gas is the future in terms of this whole crude petrochemical or whatever market you want to call it. So on the surface, it's a good thing. However, is it because it's being sold as to bridge the critical local markets? And you have to ask the questions about how do we plan to get this gas to consumers in Nigeria? I mean, that's a big question. And then also the foreign market. I think the foreign market is more critical at this point in time. As mentioned in the story, there's the whole Iran matter, with the US trying to shut Iran out. One of the biggest suppliers of gas is Qatar. Qatar is also involved in a domestic dispute with its neighbors. So you have a potential market being created by the Middle East situation, Iran, Qatar. Are we making plans to actually try to fill that gap, especially given the fact that that more of the demand will come from Europe, whom we have a geographic proximity to? That's what this should be about. Don't tell me that we want to fill our local demand. We need to sell this thing to people who can pay. So a good first step, but have identified the geopolitical necessities so that we will try and fill that demand. But at the end of the day, it's about getting the money to do what needs to be done.
Yeah, but if these companies get involved as much as they intend to, or this collaboration would, enhance or improve, it will help, eliminate any gluts that might be experienced in the near future, don't you think?
And the good thing about this is we're talking about Shell, we're talking of Seplat, we're talking of Oando. Now these are big players in the oil and gas industry. So the good thing is I want to believe that they're already seeing this market already, and that's why they want to go into it. So I think for us, the positive I'm saying here is we know that we have a high demand for gas, especially when it comes to our power generation. So this is supposed to be a good thing for us locally, and I think business-wise also it's also a good thing for us. So I think it's a positive note.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Punch newspaper has this story next. The headline reads: Governors refusing to sign death warrants of 1,832 inmates, according to the Attorney General of the Federation. That's Mr. Abubakar Malami, and he's also the Minister of Justice. He said that the number of death row inmates in prisons nationwide has reached a number 1,832 and has contributed to the congestion in the detention facilities. He put this in a report that he sent to the Federal Ministry of Justice as a report that actually oversees the 3 years of him being in office, and said really this should be tackled because it's a major challenge being faced in the efforts to decongest the prisons and make it impossible or very difficult for issues like jailbreaks and things like that to occur.
Okay, so one thing I can assure you is Amnesty International will not be very happy about the statement, because all across the world they're trying to see how they could abolish the death penalty as a whole. I always say, like, you need to understand the terrain in which you are. In Nigeria, I'm not going to really support the abolishment of death penalty, because we have gruesome form of course, we always have gruesome kind of murders everywhere in the world, but this, especially in the situation in which we are in the country, it's not the best thing, especially considering that we also have to budget a whole lot into the prisons and the like. Now we have 1,832 as of now, and the last execution we had in was actually 2016, and that was just 3 executions. and over the past 11 years, we've not had more than 7. Now, I'm not. I mean, nobody really takes. Don't let me say nobody. Most of us don't really take glory in executing people, but like we understand how um, how we're kind of not very. You know, I think what we need to look at the moment now is a way in which this can be resolved, because we have a situation in which governors are reluctant to sign the death penalties.
Which is what I was going to ask, because if you recall, sorry, let me take you back a little bit. In February of 2017, as the National Executive Council sat, was presided over by the Vice President of the country, Ayo Esho. He tasked the governor with immediate effect to actually carry out this judgment, make sure that the inmates that are on death, on the death row would actually be executed. Really, but I mean, why the delay, in your opinion?
The
I
government
think
have
look,
come under a lot of pressure from a lot of NGOs,
especially Amnesty
which
International.
regards the death penalty. But as is usual, we are putting the cart before the horse. What needs to be done first is to review our laws. The death penalty is still in the statutes. So if the courts pass a death sentence on someone, you are legally obliged to follow through. So
it can be commuted, but
Yeah.
so why don't they commute? Why do they just keep people hanging there?
there you go.
I think it's more
Yeah.
political, like especially to the outside world. The fact that Amnesty International and the likes and all the NGOs do not would see you as not being supportive of some other things.
Personally, I support the death penalty in some cases. I mean, look at, say, Japan just executed Shoko Asahara just a few days ago. There's nobody that will say that person did not deserve to go. So,
And especially in the case in Nigeria, it's not even on corruption charges that you're going to be executed. We're talking about like first-degree murder and real bad kind of
But can we also just note that governors sort of holding off on signing off on death penalties is not unique to Nigeria?
It's not. It's
all.
not unique to Nigeria.
At
Like I
all.
said,
the sheer scale here, 1,800 plus.
32. And no, it's not even about the numbers. What I think the real peculiarity to Nigeria is the fact that we have so much money to fund the prisons, and the prisons are overcrowded, the inmates are not well fed. I'm not talking about the ones, because it's a penitentiary, it's meant to integrate. Exactly. Now, when you have to put some of those budget into people that have already been convicted, it's something that we need to look at.
Thank you, Ayo. Premium Times newspaper has this story next. Federal Radio Corporation of Nigeria (FRCN) protested. So Abuja staff alleged unpaid allowances since 2010. I'll come to you with this story, Cheta. I mean, they've gone on a parade, really wearing black clothes, saying they don't even have paper, to print the stories for a radio corporation of that scale, Cheta.
FRCN,
FRCN.
Personally, I think that we should be let go. I mean, what FRCN does anybody listen to it still?
For 8 years, though.
I'm sure
Surprised
listeners,
how
just
many
because
will
you
still
know
do.
This
Cheta.
thing is just symptomatic of the fact that our government should not be in business. End of story. There are so many government keeps choking its hand inside that it really should not be doing. But because we have this on to run everything, and then we will not pay them. You keep hiring people. Oh yeah, come to mommy FG, come to mommy FG. You cannot pay them. Why? Anyway, aside from that, there is also the socio-political angle to it. Yesterday, Bala Yaragba, Yagaba, Bala Yagaba, the chairman of Tutsi local government area in Jigawa State, was actually beaten up by irate workers who had not been paid. Last week, policemen went on a protest in Maiduguri. A few months ago, staff in the presidential villa complained about unpaid allowances. Do you see a trend here?
Yeah.
Then add the fact that routinely unions in various parts of the country, government unions, go on strike again, either unpaid or unpaid money, not third increases that were not followed, all of that. See, what is the simple thread that is linking all of this is inflation is outpacing wage growth badly. Now, inflation outpacing wage growth is a global problem. Nigeria's unique problem is that we have a combination of falling value of the naira, no longer a store of value, and double-digit inflation. Summary: John go down the mature.
I've got a quick question, Chesa. I completely agree with you on a lot of those points you've made, but not paying allowances is habit has sort of been there. And the reason I call this a habit, and I would like for you to comment on it, is because when we have spoken about unpaid allowances, we spoke about it in terms of the policemen just a week or two ago. A lot of people were very angry that think of it as wages, as your salary. In the general populist's mindset, almost as though allowances are not something that are a big deal. Any commentary on that? Because if people are separating allowance and salary already, are saying, but it's allowance, not salary.
When most people are giving their employment letters, their total package is usually broken down.
Yeah.
So there is the basic wage, which usually is a small fraction of the total package. Then you have housing allowance, you have feeding allowance, you have this allowance, you have out of station allowance. For example, in case of those policemen, you have an outstation allowance.
Or in this case, the training allowance.
Training allowance. It is actually a part of your package. It is agreed to at the beginning. So there is really no reason except the fact that we live in a dystopian laboratory where people can actually do nonsense and expect fully well to get away with it. It is that knowledge. So we have a combination of factors here. We have that knowledge that they can do nonsense and get away with it, and the fact that the government really is broke. Nigeria is a poor country.
So
very poor country.
Should this lead to a call for privatization? Should it?
We've been calling for it.
Scrap it.
We've got lots.
Government should not be in business.
We've got a few messages coming through. This is up on YouTube. We've got Tijani Akanene. I hope I said your name right. He says, "Hey guys, everyone doing a great job with the newspaper headline reviews. Cheta, welcome back from Russia." He says as well. Thank you very much for that. Up on our WhatsApp, we've got from Cruz, who actually asked Cheta, "How was Russia?" That's an actual question. But Ike says, "Are you guys seriously supporting executions under this our justice system?" Questions about the death penalty. While Big T says death penalty, we may be angry and wish some horrible people dead according to their crimes, but man can't take what he can't make. We can't create life. Should the state really take it? Of course our prisons are full. We keep locking up innocent people. Right. And this one is from Oluzil, who says, great take by Cheta on the geopolitical perspectives of NNPC/Shell/Seplat and Code Deal. But bear in mind that as we have pipelines going via Algeria, Libya, or even Morocco to Europe, terrorism in those parts, including northern Nigeria, has taken heady proportions. So let's hope the planners dig their pipelines even deeper underground rather than the subsurface ones in the Niger Delta, because once bitten, twice shy.
No, if we're going to export gas to Europe, it will be via ships.
Yeah, very interesting. Let's move on very quickly to this next story from Punch newspaper. End estimated billing, enforce metering. Federal government orders NERC, is that the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission. They have been asked to enforce the contract mandating power distribution companies to provide meters to customers and eliminate estimated electricity bills in the sector. So Babatunde Fashola, who's the Minister of Power, Works and Housing, has reminded them that they took on this responsibility to actually distribute meters, and they've been licensed activities and really this function. But if they're not ready this, what do you make of this story?
Okay, you know, there's actually a bill in front of the National Assembly on the billing system has been urged. They've been urged to pass. But what I'm saying here is there's actually a contract in place. I mean, it's more like common knowledge that they need to provide the consumers with meters. And what's funny about this is actually a very serious problem in the distribution of electricity, because what happens is they're given a particular quota, let me use that, a particular amount that they have to sell to the end users, and what they do is those that are using the billing system, of course, would pay the correct amount, and the rest is just shared amongst every other person. Those are the ones that they use estimated billings on. And we actually, as of today, have 2,000 megawatts that is there, you know, that should be used like there, not a dingling one. And as long as we don't have enough prepaid meters, this will continue to happen, and people will still keep paying exorbitant amounts. What I see here is, I don't know if it's even necessary at this point that we even need to sit down and wait for that act to be passed. If there's a contract in place, it's just unfortunate. I know nobody will probably want to go this way, but if there's a contract in place, and I think the citizen can actually take the discourse to court.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think you could actually sue them and say, if you're not providing me this, then you shouldn't be charging me exorbitant amount. You know,
especially when we pay bills every month. But
yeah.
Anyway, thank you very much, Ayo.
Okay, thank you very much, gentlemen. Still more stories coming your way. Up next, Cheta, we're talking about people absconding now to Israel, of all places to abscond. Like, they don't have enough land struggles of their own. From the Premium Times, soldier, policeman, lecturer, and 97 other Nigerian pilgrims have absconded in Israel. Now, it was a Christian pilgrimage. There are about 100 people in total. And then we've got commentary from the NCPC boss, who basically says this is... he calls it, he says the absconders came from a red state flag, essentially, or a state that has been red flagged, and just says it's unpatriotic, amongst a number of other interesting comments. Your thoughts?
I like that it's unpatriotic, like patriotism means anything. Anyway, these guys who have taken off in a country with a clearly racist government are very foolish.
Yeah.
I was going to say, this is not very intelligent of all the places to abscond.
Let's call it what it is. They're very foolish. But having said that, for example, on my flights to Russia, there were like 4 Nigerian boys who told me that they didn't plan to come back. And there used to be a time in my life that when people told me things like that, to Russia. When there used to be a time in my life when people told me things like that, I would try to convince them about coming back and all of that. But having gone into the field, so for example, last week when I came back, I immediately went to Nsukka for a program. I think, and whenever I go to places, one of the things I always do is talk to people. See, it takes a certain level of desperation for people to hear stories about the kind of government Israel has, or things about what's happening in Italy or whatever, and still go through the hoops in order to abscond. And so we need to start asking ourselves the important questions. Why are people so desperate? As in, we need to take that long, hard look at ourselves. Just last week, the Economist newspaper reported that in 2016, about 11,000 Nigerian women arrived in Sicily via the Sahara. And of these, 80% of them were forced into prostitution. Now, there's no way anymore that anybody living here going to Italy will not know that a large percentage of them will end up as prostitutes. Yet they still go. We've passed the stage where you can simply explain this thing away by saying they are greedy. There's something desperate driving it. And some of the things I have seen on the field only gives a hint of the kind of... See, internal security in Nigeria has collapsed. This drives this thing. Anyway, time is a problem.
Indeed. But thank you very much for that, Cheta. Very detailed thought to that. Up next, in lighter and literally lightly real news from the Guardian newspaper, President Buhari is to commission an $823.5 million light rail. It covers 45 kilometers on average, thereabouts. And they're saying it's going to solve a lot of the gridlock issues in Abuja. Now, and when we think of gridlock, we tend to think of Lagos more than Abuja. But any comments on this, Cheta?
Well, congratulations. Well, I mean, for a while, certain people denied that this project existed, but the government has continued it. Yeah, continuity is something that we've been lacking, so they've done well in that respect, and well done to...
Talking about, but the person in the center, the scandal has remained strangely quite silent. Adeosun applied for exemption certificate, says NYSC newspaper. We had this come out as NYSC's director in charge of press, Mrs. Adenike, has said that, they're going to investigate the purported certificate that she did apply for exemption, but they haven't actually made any official comments as to
a story came out a while back, said that the lifespan of news in Nigeria as a whole is 2 weeks. So I feel like what they're trying to do is stall for a while and then see how this will just blow over, just diffuse, because the statement by NYS is she applied, and
Yes.
I don't think even from the report from Premium Times there was any allegation that she did not apply. You know, so they're just saying she applied, and then they're saying they're going to investigate, and then you see after 2 weeks people forget about it, some other news comes up, and then we just forget about the whole thing. You know, my problem is this is the Honorable Minister of Finance.
We're supposed to have a lot of honorable ministers, though, so let's just be. I think honorable is just a general name stamp. Let's not put it as though it's
though
people,
I know, but you expect, and this is someone that was trained in the UK, where Boris Johnson just because of not agreeing with the Prime Minister on the issue.
Boris Johnson is your example.
I'm just giving an example. I mean, it's a society in which she grew up in. People, when they feel any form of anything, they resign.
Well, let's take a look. I like that you mentioned that, because let's look at this. We have grown up. Let's look at Nigeria. A lot of people expect to cut corners. Standardly.
I know, but
so what does that say about us as a people? Of the systems, the lack of systems, perhaps the lack of processes that we have, and the fact. Cheta, can I finish the question? Cheta, can I just finish? And the fact that the NYSC itself has not come out to say conclusively, and cannot say conclusively almost immediately, that this certificate is a real one or a false one. What does that say about the institutions we have?
I agree with you, but it is
The
thing is this. Look, hold on, Cheta. See, here's what happens here. It is politics. The moment this scandal came out, I'm sure there's been a lot of talks under and then behind the closed doors and all that going on, and perhaps this is how they were going to do, just to stall for a while and then see how this is going to pan out. It's painful that someone who came from a civilized society who we expect. But we expect someone to reform the system.
Guilty of thinking that human beings are.
Thank you very much.
Incentives. I have seen Oibo people, Chinese people driving one way in this country.
Very true and unfortunate. But now we've got to talk about other stories from the New Telegraph. The National Assembly faces a sanitary challenge. It's the honourable members that you spoke, are facing real challenges. I mean, the conveniences are littered with all number of questionable body fluids are flowing around that area.
This is the height. When you have the national and they have sanitary issues where the toilet is smelling. Let me use that term. It's and the funny thing is, you say you want to see how a particular organization is being run. You go to their convenience, and I mean that really, because usually when you go to I'm going to have to mention our federal ministries or the local government and the likes, you dare not even try to use their toilets. What you see is some of them even have some locked. You said? Yeah. Okay. That one is actually relatively clean.
Yes, at the moment it is actually, because I've
even though someone's going to ask
you on Wednesday.
Sorry for the one.
Relatively clean.
Did you arrive at night? Maybe at night they were tired by that time.
But what you have is someone coming to help you, tell you that uncle, do you want to, because you expect you to give something. So what I'm trying to say is that you expect that a place like National Assembly. Well, I'm not exactly too surprised. I'm sure you saw recently where there were herds passing through the National Assembly. Have you seen the video?
Let's not even forget the guy who stole the mace and ran out and started questioning the security apparatus in the National Assembly.
This just says a whole lot about the country. If the National Assembly has this kind of sanitary issue, what do you expect of the rest of the country with the amount of budgets that is being pumped into the National Assembly? It's a shame. They should be ashamed of themselves.
It's a jungle out there. Let's see if we can take one or two messages very quickly.
Tyra from Yaba sent this one on WhatsApp. Said police in the north and FRCN is complaining about unpaid allowances gradually spiraling out of control. Very soon other government agencies will start complaining because it is not ending. We have this one from Nick in Apapa. It says she applied. Yes. Was it granted? NYSC should come out clean. Mrs. Kemi Adeosun owes us an explanation, and she's got to talk because silence means consent, period. Anyway.
All right, let's keep it moving.
We'll just sit in Lagos and talk.
In our final story, we've got this one in from the Premium Times, which Cheta is going to talk about. Group explains distribution of $323 million Abacha loot among poor Nigerians. And now the federal government's decision to share that amount of money recovered from the Swiss government has been talked about a lot recently. And the African Network for Environment and Economic Justice, and NERC, has come out to talk about just this. Cheta, your thoughts on this story?
Let's start with let me come clean. I'm prejudiced against the decision. So they are trying to explain why it is the right decision, and to me it doesn't make sense.
Why not?
There's enough body of studies to show that simply sharing money
Doesn't
to
work.
people doesn't work. If you give a man a fish, you only feed him for a day. If you teach him how to fish, you feed him for a lifetime.
Let's start with the fact that, sorry, just to, so everyone can follow along, is that the executive director of Allege, David Ugolo, said that the Swiss court, which handled the negotiations, had ordered the involvement of the World Bank in supervising the use of the funds as a condition to prevent mismanagement and relooting.
How many times has the World Bank or multilateral body supervised stuff in Nigeria and things still went awry? For a start, okay, it is 9 states that are involved in this sharing of money, and we don't even know how many people are in those 9 states. 2 of those states are littered with IDP camps. We already have a situation where Pandef is complaining because there's no Niger Delta states involved in the sharing of the money, and they quite logically have pointed out that the money came from the Niger Delta. It's a hot mess, but let's come back to the base. Create an artificial scarcity of fish and he will eat suya. So what we have is we are basically throwing fish at these guys just for a day. But it's not sustainable. After this windfall, what's next? They will still remain poor.
Here's a question. What happens when people don't want to take the time to learn? Because learning takes time.
Then you're going to have to make them do that, because
You can,
in
force,
the long run,
you can force people
it's
to
not going to
learn.
be forced. You could actually
create
incentives.
which is why I added that third thing. Teach him to create an artificial skill. You create the incentives that they will want to use.
And by the way, sorry, let me just mention something. I don't want to believe that it's the World Bank or that the Swiss Bank that it's actually agreeing to it was agreed doesn't mean that the idea came from them.
It was after months of negotiations, and it was a big condition for them that it would be used for social intervention. The type of social intervention was our decision.
So and I think that this still boils down to the fact that they lack ideas on how to actually make this work out.
Maybe
So
if they didn't reach a consensus, if they did not reach this consensus, the money probably wouldn't have been released.
Can we allow Cheta to finish his thoughts?
Now, the second thing that I had in mind comes out of the first, that we are simply throwing money at the poor. What do poor people spend money on mostly? They spend it on food. We have a situation where the food inflation is in double digits. The government is creating conditions that is making, for example, this thing that they approved to buy drones to monitor smuggling of rice. You are actively making food more expensive. So these people will simply throw this money down into food, become poorer in the process. So I said, we need to focus on policies, not palliatives. At the end of the day, these palliatives will be a waste of time. The problems will still be there, and the money will be relooted.
Cheta, thank you very much. And on that note, we round up our conversation this morning inside of Freshly Pressed. A big thank you to everyone who's listened and who sent in comments and said hello to everybody in the studio. You can continue your chat with them online. Find Cheta at Chickster, that's CHXTA on Twitter. You can find Ayo as at Esho1 up on Twitter as well. We would have tweeted both their handles, so go check it out. I'm searching or using the hashtag FreshlyPressed981. Coming up next at 8:15, we will be talking entertainment inside of the Grapevine, and we've got some very interesting things lined up for you, so keep listening to Smooth Breakfast. Thank you very much, guys.